Hey everybody, it's Jay Privman along with Mike Welsch and Andy Beyer, and for the next hour we are going to be previewing Saturday's Kentucky Derby. We're going to give an overview of the field, and then about 15 minutes or so after the start of this telecast, you will be able to submit questions. Actually, you can submit them right now, and our behind-the-scenes editors will post them for us later, and we will answer all your questions. Andy, I want to start with you as we do our little pre-roundtable here. From an overview of this field, and especially through the prism of Beyer speed figures, give me your impression of this group.
Well, I think going into the Derby every year, we all hope to see a big star, a legitimately great horse emerge. And we had that possibility when Life Was Good was winning his races in California. I mean, he got a Beyer speed figure of 107 in the San Felipe, which would have won most Kentucky Derbies in the last decade or so. He was a brilliant horse. And when he got hurt, we were really left with what I would view as a depleted field. I mean, nobody had run close to his level of performance. And, kind of you've got, at least a third of the field is in a group of kind of narrow grouping of, figures in the mid 90s to 100, that suggest that there are a lot of horses who can win the race. But I would have rather seen a horse come in here with a big number to say, this is a killer.
So just one quick follow-up on that. When you see a situation like that where the numbers are, there's not a real wide variance in the figs among the top contenders, how important is your pre-race work, going back and looking at trip notes and video, and or how important do you think trips will be itself when the race is run?
Well, I mean, the trips are always important in the 20-horse Derby. Unfortunately, you can't anticipate that, however, a big field like that is going to develop. But I certainly watch all of the major preps and, try to get some kind of an edge from that. And then I religiously consult my workout report. I mean, I think it's one of the greatest features that the racing form has. I mean, when you can get kind of insight on the way horses are trained. I mean, I would know how to hold a stopwatch, but I know from reading these commentaries, it's a huge factor in big races like the Derby.
Well, Mike Welsch is well-versed in the art of holding a stopwatch. Mike, you've been in Louisville for nearly 2 weeks now. Just give me your overview of your impressions of how good a group you think this field is, and then we'll zero in on some of the significant things that you've seen in the fortnight you've been there.
Well, I mean, I agree with Andy that there's a large group of horses that seem to be in the mix with essential quality, probably on paper anyway, coming in, a little bit separated from the others. He's a legitimate favorite. There's no doubt about that on paper. I mean, the question is, the first thing I thought about when they crossed the wire in the Bluegrass is, this hard race could be a detriment for essential quality and highly motivated coming down, 4 weeks later in the Derby. And I think that is a burning question here, whether essential quality can continue to run the races he's been running. If he does with a clean trip, he's the horse to beat. But, if you think you could beat him, the way I look at the race between past performances and the workouts I've seen, there's a large group of horses, some that'll be big prices that seem, if things went their right way and they run like they've been training, can maybe upset the apple cart.
Well, let's play that out a little bit more here. I mean, a lot of times after workouts, we hear the trainer talk of, it was just what we wanted and all that. That's one of the reasons you're there, is to actually tell us what's going on. So who are the ones that, the two or three that have most impressed you? And by contrast, who are ones that you thought might have been better than they've ended up looking in the time that you've seen them there?
Well, I think my general impression is that probably the best work I've seen was Mandolin's penultimate Derby work. I just thought he went really easily gallop. I love the gallop outs. I like when horses gallop out. Not everybody shares that opinion, as I've come to find out. But to me, from watching these, run-up works to the Derby, horses that show good energy on the gallop outs, tend to show that they're moving in the right direction. And I like to see that. And Mandolin has not only worked well, but he's just looked well, in general in the mornings, coming out of those works. And this last week, he and Essential Quality have kind of partnered up, going out early at the same time, one behind the other, and they both looked very good. But from a workout standpoint, I thought Mandolin was very good. Of the four Todd Pletcher horses, when I came here, obviously Known Agenda on paper is the best of the group, but I was really hoping to see him put in one of those wow works to take me to the next level with him, as far as that goes. So, but, he's not an outstanding workhorse, as Todd kind of warned me when I watched him work back at Palm Beach Downs back on April 9th. I thought that day was with blinkers off. I thought maybe with blinkers on, he would go to that next level. He really hasn't. He hasn't done anything wrong in the morning. His works are fine. He just hasn't taken me to that next level. But his stablemate Dynamic One, I thought has. I really love the way he's worked. I like the gallop outs and his work. I know coming out of the Wood was not really a race that you kind of think is going to produce a Derby winner. But the way he's progressed, he looks like he's moving forward. I think he's sitting on a better race, a bigger race. Whether it's good enough to win, I'm not so sure. But he's going to be a big price, and I think he's worth throwing in the mix a little bit, at least at a big price. I also like the way Steve Asmussen's Midnight Bourbon has looked and trained here. His work on April 19th was tremendous. And then his supposed maintenance work, we've seen this from Steve before, where his horse is 5 days out. They just have an easy half, at 50 and change, pull up quickly after the wire just to kind of stretch their legs going into the race. But not with Midnight Bourbon. He actually went 5/8 from the half, galloped out well around the turn. I'm guessing he did this because he hadn't run in 6 weeks rather than 4 and 5 like most of these others. But he's just giving off good vibes to me. He looks good in the morning. I just think he's coming up to an even better race. I mean, he's paired top buyers in his last 2 races, which a lot of times indicates anyway that they're going to move forward. So I think this is a horse that's sitting on a big race also at a square price.
We're taking a look at the tape, Mike, now of Known Agenda working in company with Sainthood, and it looks like Known Agenda is just Sainthood's going the easier of the two as they come to the wire here. Is that your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, Sainthood has impressed me on a regular basis too. He's looked really well, and obviously this is a pretty good performance by him, holding his own with Known Agenda. But it's like I said, and like Todd said to me, Known Agenda does what he has to. You see, he keeps his head in front all the way out on the gallop out, though. And I just think this horse, the Known Agenda, has a lot of pluses. And so even without a wow work, he's got so much going for him. Until he drew the inside post, that's going to remain to be seen how much of a struggle that's going to be for him. But I'm not put off by his works. I was hoping to see more. He would have been a no-brainer top pick for me with a Dynamic One type of work, but I still like him. He just has too much going for him. If you're looking to beat the favorite, and I think at 2-1, you almost have compelled to try to beat the favorite in here. To me, Known Agenda is the most logical one after that, and he hasn't done anything to tell me that he's not going to run another good race.
And you can find Mike's detailed workout reports on not only the Kentucky Derby, but the entire Derby card for Saturday and the entire Oaks card for Friday. That's part of the DRF VIP Derby packages that are available at drf.com. You can obviously purchase past performances at drf.com as well. So make sure you get everything. All the races have been drawn. You can follow along with us, and as we do this for the next near 45, 50 minutes or so. Andy, let me circle back to you. We're going to be taking questions from everybody, and we'll probably end up covering all the runners. But from a regional standpoint, you mentioned how you thought Life is Good kind of stood out, but by my way of looking at things, I still think the strength is in California this year. I thought it was a good group of 3-year-olds out there, and I'm wondering what you thought in terms of their performances and their figures compared to the ones that are coming out of Florida or New Orleans.
Of course, anywhere that Bob Baffert is going to have a lot of good 3-year-olds. But I thought the Santa Anita Derby was, for me, at least in terms of my handicap, it was kind of the key race of the preps. I watch all the races, and I always try to look for track biases or trips that horses may have, so that covers up the form a little. And I thought on Santa Anita Derby Day, I saw the one significant bias that existed in Grade 1 preps, and the rail was a big advantage on that card. I mean, the 12 race card, there were 6 races on the dirt, and all 6 won by horses who were on the rail for all or much of the race. And Medina Spirit had a trip in that race that normally you wouldn't pay special attention to it, except for the fact of that bias. When the gate opened, I mean, he broke very sharply, but John Velasquez probably didn't want to rush and get into a battle for the lead from an outside post. So he raided and put Medina Spirit, sitting on the outside of the lead while Rock Your World went front on the rail. I mean, I think we have a video of.
Yeah, let's take a look at the start of the Santa Anita Derby. I think that'd be illustrative of what you're trying to talk about here. Show everybody what about the trips of these 2 horses. Yeah. Rock Your World was drawn to the inside of Medina Spirit. Here we go, Andy. Go ahead.
Right. And under normal circumstances, nothing that happened here was all that earth shaking. But the fact that Medina Spirit, was positioned wide and stayed there all the way around, on this track while Rock Your World had the rail was a crucial fact, and it really makes Medina Spirit look a lot worse on paper than he is. And if you say, okay, I'm really going to forgive this race, now you're looking at a horse who ran second to Life is Good in his 2 previous defeats. In one race he was narrowly beaten and got a figure of 99. He's got solid look. He had solid looking form going into this race, and to me, on looking at figures and just the overall quality of his form, he's at least as good as anybody. And he's got the best Derby trainer in America, and he's going to be a double-digit price. I mean, what more do you want? I do not want Rock Your World coming off of this, the perfect loose on the lead inside trip. I never bet or never want to bet horses in the Derby who come in with preparation that is too light, and of course he is bucking curse of Apollo in this race. I know you put a big emphasis on that, Jay, but it was a horse who never raced as a 2-year-old, missing by 1 day. But I want to see. I guess I'm just old-fashioned in this regard, but I like to see horses, with a certain amount of bottom, and 2-year-old experience, and just a good racing foundation coming into the Derby. I know in the present day, you've got horses like Justify who will hop up and win without doing much, but I still want that seasoning, and Medina Spirit has got it, and I think he's got the ability. That's my horse.
Yeah, I think regarding Justify, I think that was kind of the perfect storm. He was a very, very talented horse, and I think when we now look back at that crop, that was probably a below average group of 3-year-olds that he ended up beating that year. But he is the only one to have, as you put it, broken the curse of Apollo. But we all know horses are trained and campaigned a lot differently now than they were even 30 or 40 years ago. Mike, I just want to follow up with you. I mean, you've seen only for a few days now, but both Medina Spirit and Rock Your World since they arrived in Kentucky. What have your impressions been of those horses since they've gotten there?
Medina Spirit has got here a little earlier. He's done a little more than Hot Rod Charlie and Rock Your World. The first day I saw him that he actually galloped, he was very impressive. He had real high energy level. He was 2-minute licking all the way around. The last couple of days, last several days, not as much. I'm not so sure if that's semi by design, because maybe they felt he did too much that first day and they don't want a repeat of that. Or I'm not so sure if it's an indication that, maybe he did do too much and he's regressed a little bit off of that first day. So I'm going to keep a good eye on him tomorrow. Just took a quick glance at my work reports from out west and Toby Terrell. He wasn't that impressed with his final work, if I remember right. I quickly saw the grade there. So he's a little bit of a puzzle for me. At first I thought, well, it's Bob Baffert. He's going to be 15-1. He's going to get a nice stalking trip and against the bias. But, the more I'm looking at him, I did not put him in my top selections.
Well, I have him highly ranked, and Andy obviously has him very highly ranked. There are 20 horses in this Kentucky Derby, and we're going to now open up the chat room. Our behind-the-scenes editor, Emily Shields, is going to be posting some questions, and we'll read them aloud, and then we'll go around the table and see who wants to take them. So I think it's time to do that. We'll start with a question from Zavi saying, how can I, or do I need to adjust the Beyer numbers if the track is off on the first Saturday in May? We don't expect the track to be off, but from a general standpoint, Andy, why don't, since your last name is Beyer, I'll let you answer the question.
Well, you wouldn't adjust the number. And the number is the number. That's how a horse ran in a previous start. Now, if you see a horse whose past performances indicate that he usually runs well or runs poorly when he has a muddy track, you might reasonably deduce, he's going to run a higher or lower figure. But I wouldn't try to say, well, PG, he ran 98 in his last, but it's wet today, so he'll run 94. We don't do that.
All right, let's move on to our next question. Gary Fitzpatrick wants to know, interested in your thoughts on King Fury. I'll take that because I have King Fury in my top 4 in the racing form. I picked him 4th. I'll let you guys weigh in after me, but here's my thought on him. Obviously, you're taking a shot here because he's only had the one start at 3. He got a complete setup last time with a fast-paced race over a sloppy track at 1 1/16 miles. All of those are things that you can certainly and rightly pick apart. To me, the intriguing thing about him is that I think he was over-raced at 2. They really hammered on him, especially his last couple of starts, coming back on short rest and being pitched against some good horses. And I think there's the possibility, and that's why you're going to get a decent price on him, because people are not sure how to evaluate him. But I think there's the possibility that this horse is a lot better at 3 than he was at 2. He's by Curlin, so he certainly has a right to be better as he gets older. I mean, let's remember, Curlin didn't even race as a 3-year-old. And he's out of a flatter mare, so he should, by all rights, be better with age and with distance. And to me, he's an intriguing horse to at least get into the gimmicks.
Jay, have we seen a horse win the Derby with only one start at 3? You're the historian.
I'm sure we have, Andy, but yeah, I don't have that right in front of me. So yeah,
I can't remember.
I'll get on that. Mike?
When we opened up and I talked about some horses that were training well, if I added one more to the list, it would have been King Fury. This horse has done really well since he's come over here. Of all the horses that worked on the 24th, his gallop out was the best of the bunch, and that was a pretty good group that worked that day. He galloped into that work well, and he's come out of it looking well. It's just, what stops me is the one start and short turnaround. A longtime handicapper where I respect quite a lot made the comment to me that Kenny McPeak is trying to pull off something here with King Fury that would test Bob Baffert's skills. So, but, I certainly can see off of what I've seen over the last couple of weeks anyway, that he'd be worth including at a big price if you're playing gimmicks, at least underneath. I'm not sure he can win it, but I agree with Jay that he has a big chance to get a piece of the number if he can work out a trip. Of course, we'll say that with every horse in the race.
All right, let's move on to our next question here, and this is from Joseph William McKay. What's your take on Obesos working with his head cocked sideways and, in his opinion, not looking comfortable? Mike, do you share that opinion?
I think this just might be him. I just haven't seen enough of him to know. I thought his work was good. The one thing about Obesos' work, it was officially, his last work, the one I saw. And, they tell me the one before that was excellent too. The clock was here when I spoke to them. But that was really a 7 furlong work. It wasn't a 5 furlong work. Greg Foley's style of working horses is to work them from the 3/8 or the half and then let them run out at least a quarter mile past the wire. Most of the time it's on their own. This time he was asked to do it, and he responded to his credit. So I thought it was a good work. I was a little put off by the fact he had his head cocked, but if I remember right, he straightened it out a little bit at the end. And again, I just don't know this horse, so that just might be him. The work was a good one. I'm just not quite sure this horse, coming out of the work, just a couple of times I've seen him, just didn't make a great impression like King Fury has. So I left him out. I could see where, you could be impressed enough by that effort and his last start to throw him in at a big price too. I just, that room was crowded, so I left him out of it.
Andy, what are your thoughts of Obesos, just in terms of a horse to use maybe for gimmicks or better than that? Where are you on this horse?
I'm not thrilled with him. I mean, maybe he was just admiring the twin spire talking. I couldn't judge that, but I don't think.
All right, let's move on to our next question from Sputnik Jones. What do you think of Mattress Mac betting at least $1 million on the favorite to cover his sales promotion? Just to give everybody an update on what that is, Mattress Mac, Jim McIngvale, the Houston furniture store owner, said that he's going to make a bet of approximately $2 million on whoever the favorite is in the Derby. So that's obviously going to be Essential Quality, who has been made the 2-1 favorite on the morning lines of both Marty McGee for Daily Racing Form and Mike Battaglia, who makes the official line for Churchill Downs. So, Andy, I'll throw this to you. I mean, owing to the fact that there's going to be that kind of a wager made on a horse that is not your top choice, how much do you think that's going to impact the overall win pool and the horses that you like?
Well, clearly it will have an impact. I mean, it's the deal is it's that he is offering that anyone who buys a mattress between now and the Derby will get the purchase price refunded if if this horse, if the favorite wins. So I mean, it's I got to admire his gumption. I mean, people kind of, I guess, from a distance, kind of dismiss him as a little bit of a crackpot, but he's a real promoter. He loves the game. Everybody says that now that he's like an extremely generous guy supporting charities at home. So I hope he doesn't get hurt here.
I mean, the amount of work that he does in the community in Houston. My wife is from the Houston area, and we've long been familiar with the charity work that he does there through the hurricanes that they've had and with the pandemic. He's a very benevolent person. He's going to be benevolent to the win pool here, it sounds like. Mike Welsch, what are your thoughts on how this is going to impact maybe some of the horses that you like? Who are a couple of horses that maybe you're looking at that might now be more significant overlays than you might have thought they'd be before we knew of this situation?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, he did the same thing before the Super Bowl. I think he bet on Tampa with
right.
You get your money back if Tampa doesn't win. Obviously, they covered there. But this is pari-mutuel racing, so this particular wager is really going to have an impact on the final odds. We've seen a couple of these things before. Sweet Northern Saint is the one that comes to mind quickly to me when he ran against Barbaro. That Barbaro was the favorite going into the last click, and somebody bet, I don't know if $2 to $4 million, but it was enough to change the board to make Barbaro go up a point. So this is going to have a significant effect, and I'm guessing Mike Battaglia and Marty McGee took this news in account when they made the line, because I don't think they would have made Essential Quality 2 to 1 until they found out that this extra money's coming in, and this is extra money that's coming in not based on any handicapping of any sort. It's just, I'm betting the favorite, and here you go. So you're almost compelled, if you think the horse is even if you don't think the horse is beatable, you're almost compelled to bet something else just because you're getting an overlay. So I mean, a horse like Known Agenda, who probably would have been 4 to 1 about 3 days ago, between the post position draw and Mattress Mac, you're going to get 6 to 1 now. I mean, Marty McGee, who said he was going to bet this horse anyway, he's said he's going to double the bet or bet more because he knows he's going to be a bigger price, and that's the case down the line. The problem is here, if you want to bet against Essential Quality, there's really not a standout to me among the others. It's hard to zero in on just one horse and say, well, now I'm going to get a bigger price, and I love this guy. At least for me, there's nobody in here that I say I love, but I may have to make a couple of wagers just knowing you're getting a bit of the best of it, which is hard to do in pari-mutuel wagering with the takeout and everything. If you're not betting Essential Quality, you're getting a break. It's negating the take on some of these other horses because of this kind of random bet.
I just don't see Essential Quality as like a standout favorite or really anything all that special in the context of this field.
Well, even more reason to bet.
His speed figures are kind of no better than a half a dozen other horses. He had to work pretty hard in his last race, so it's not like he's moving up to a new level. Like looking at his form, I mean, obviously he's got a perfect record. I can't talk too much, but I just don't. He's never impressed me, at least up to this point, as somebody that says this is a special horse.
The thing I like about him, though, Andy, and I didn't pick him, but the thing I'm going to say is that what I've admired about this horse is that he is adjustable. If there's no pace like there was in the Bluegrass, he can go up and be right on the tail of a lone speed horse. And if they go too fast, he can, like they did in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he can sit back and blast home. He's raced at 3 different tracks. He's raced on fast tracks and sloppy tracks, and in all those, and then different pace scenarios as well. And he's won every time. So by my way of looking at it, he's a thoroughly admirable horse with one huge exception, and that's the price that he's going to be on Saturday.
Yeah.
So that's my thought on that. Let's move on here to Paul Quarini's question. He says, great meeting you at Belmont. in 2018 for a Q&A that we did with Ron Turcotte. Thank you. That was a lot of fun, obviously, to be with Ron Turcotte there. He said, which horse is best bred to get the Derby? We got several questions here. Let's take these one at a time. Who's best bred to get the Derby distance? Andy Beyer is a noted pedigree expert, so we'll start with him.
Well, essential quality is by Taffet. I mean, you can't do much better with that for stamina. So, I would not throw him out on pedigree grounds. That's for sure.
Mike, you got any thoughts on this subject?
I'm on the same level of pedigree expertise as Andy, I would guess, but known agenda is by Curlin. I mean, you got to respect that. But we'll defer to you on this one, Jim.
Yeah, I'm sort of a contrarian when it comes to this. I really think pedigree is overrated when it comes to the Derby. Now, we've seen so many horses who in the past looked like, they quote unquote couldn't get the distance because of some supposed deficiency in their pedigree, and they've outrun that pedigree. And even last year, and I fell victim to it. I was against Authentic because I thought offspring of Into Mischief were unable to get a mile and a quarter. And as we all know, the dosage theory is something that people don't even bring up anymore because it was just, there were so many holes in it. So I don't think pedigree matters that much. Once you've seen the established form of these horses, and then you can maybe extrapolate as how you think they'll do. So to me, to try and say who's the best bred horse in the Derby, when you're looking at horses that are by Curlin and Tappet and Into Mischief and Oxbow, you're splitting hairs. Which horse, though? Here, this is a better and maybe a more varied answer that we can get here from the three of us. Who had the most ideal final prep? Mike, I'll start with you on that one.
Well, I might be a little biased here, but I like what Known Agenda did. I mean, he had to come inside early, took dirt, swung outside, so he got a pretty good schooling in the Florida Derby. But he also won easily enough where you would think it maybe didn't empty the tank completely. Plus, it gives him 5 weeks instead of 4. I love the placing of the Florida Derby. Everybody criticized Gulfstream years ago when they made that move from 4 weeks to 5. Barbaro won it the first year, going to 5 weeks. And I just think it gives trainers an extra week to prepare their horses and to get them ready in case they do have a grueling race. I bet you right now that Brad Cox and Chad Brown, which they had another week coming out of the Bluegrass for their 2 horses. But I just think it was Known Agenda. I think he got a good schooling. He's had plenty of time to recuperate. He got a big number. He's moving in the right direction. So for me, it's Known Agenda.
Andy?
You know whose prep impressed me and surprised me quite a bit was Hot Rod Charlie, a horse who had never been that much on my radar screen. This horse, most of his races had laid off the pace, closed okay. And he just showed a different dimension in the Louisiana Derby, going out and dueling for the lead. Now, the speed horses, he and Midnight Bourbon, ran 1-2 around the track. And normally you would say, okay, well, the race favored speed. But the fact was that was a very fast pace. There's not a lot to go on because, at 1 mile and 3/16, that's a distance that they, until last year, they'd never run at the fairgrounds for any races. But, went back and look at last year, and Wells Bayou, who's a fast front runner, went his first half and winning in 48, and Hot Rod Charlie goes in 47 in a duel and draws off. So he showed a different dimension. He's got a figure that's certainly good enough to win here. That's a horse that will certainly be part of my exacts.
He's going to be more than part of my exact. He's very prominent in my selection box, which we'll get to in a minute. But he, for me, was the most. I liked his final prep. He had trained brilliantly coming out of the Robert Lewis at Santa Anita, and he ran to those works when he won the Louisiana Derby. And I think he's continued on that upward pattern since then. And to Mike's point, we handicap races every day now where we see horses that are fresh coming into big races or even regular races where they're 4, 5, 6 weeks, sometimes up to 8 weeks. I think trainers, modern day trainers, like having time between races. And here's a horse who, even though he's had 6 weeks off, to me, that's not a knock. I think we have to wrap our heads around the new way that horses are trained and not think that, well, just because a horse hasn't run for 6 weeks, it's a detriment. I think this horse will run well. And I thought his final prep, like Andy's, was one of the better ones, if not the best one out there. Let's move on to our next question. Michael Turner wants to know if Helium has a chance. Mike Welsch, what have you seen of Helium in Kentucky?
I mean, Helium hasn't done anything to suggest that he's not, going to run a good race. I just don't, between the 3 starts, and I agree with Andy, I'm old school too. I think they just need to do more. And he's been idle, not 6 weeks. He's been idle 8 weeks. His numbers aren't close to these others. I just think it's really a tall task to expect Helium to find himself in the top 4 unless everything breaks perfectly for him. I know Mark Cassey thinks that he's flying way below the radar. The people are kind of not paying enough attention to him. But again, he falls in that category for me immediately with only the 3 starts. I just can't go for Helium.
Yeah, I would say he's below the radar for good reason.
Yeah, to me, it's not that he's had 8 weeks off. To me, it's he's just too slow, and he beat a very, 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 very suspect field in the Tampa Bay Derby. That the form of that race has not held up at all. So, unfortunately, Michael, none of the 3 of us like him. But considering he's not a 2-to-1 horse that we're knocking, he's a 30 or 50-to-1 horse. Please don't let us dissuade you from at least making a small wager on him, because we don't want that on our conscience if somehow he runs in, though we will collectively be surprised if that happens. Kevin Rother wants to know how much of a hindrance is post 1 in a 20-horse field. I'll start off on that one. Kevin, it used to be a big deal, and maybe it still will be, but Churchill Downs now has a single starting gate that has 20 stalls. They used to, for the 20-horse field, have a 14-horse main gate and then a 6-horse auxiliary gate. And because of that, the horse that was on the rail at the gap where the 1.25 mile start is, he actually had to make a slight right-hand turn to avoid going up the chute and being able to get onto the course proper a 1/16 of a mile into the race. I don't think that's going to be an issue now because of the new gate. The stalls are a little bit narrower, and you don't have that big gap between post 14 and 15 where you've got 2 gates side by side. So to me, if Known Agenda gets beat on Saturday, it's not going to be because he had the rail. I don't think it's as big a deal as it used to be, but I want to see what Mike or Andy think on that regard.
I just think that there is in racing nowadays among a lot of fans just are we getting a feedback here? And I think too many racing fans just get obsessed about the dreaded rail. It seems to be a particular affliction in California. Oh, he's going to get trapped down on the rail. I mean, this is what jockeys are for. I mean, they steer them. I never remember people saying, gee, this horse, Cordero can't win on this horse. He's on the rail. Nah, I would be more worried about post 19 or 20 because you're almost guaranteed to lose ground, which is demonstrably a bad thing. But bad things can happen on the rail, but they're more likely to happen.
Mike, you want anything to add on this, or should we move on?
No, I share your sentiment. I think with the new gate, that's not as big a problem. Hopefully, it won't be as big a problem as it had been in the past.
Right. All right. Let's see who's next. Ronald McCaskill wants to know, what's the run-up distance for the Derby? I don't know, and honestly don't really.
I don't believe it's much at all. If I remember right, they had me time the Derby as a backup with a watch a couple of years, and that gate is pretty much right up on at the 1.25 miles where the timer starts, if I recall correctly.
All right, let's move on to Jeffrey Wilson's question, who wants to know, how do we see the pace of the Derby this year? I think that's that's a good question. Who do we think will be gunning for the lead? Andy, how do you see this race unfolding early on?
I don't know, because I don't know that I don't know that there's there's no groovy in here that you say, well, this horse is going to go. But with 20 horses who are going to need to establish some kind of a position, at least several horses will be going. So I can't predict. I mean, I think that if my horse were bent on going to the lead, he might be able to do it. So Bob Baffert has certainly never been afraid to send him to the lead. So that's one possible scenario.
Mike, how do you see the race unfolding?
I think Rock Your World, if I'm John Sadler, I want to, duplicate exactly what happened in the San Bernardino Derby.
I agree completely.
But he's got a couple of horses outside him with speed, highly motivated, and Soup and Sandwich, especially Soup and Sandwich, who not only went to the lead, and ran well at doing it in the Florida Derby, but he's been kind of keyed up in his works as well. A little headstrong. So I think if he breaks, of course, all of this is tantamount to who breaks well and doesn't break well. But assuming everybody breaks, I think Soup and Sandwich and highly motivated are going to go outside him. I'm almost certain Midnight Bourbon and Medina Spirit are going to go inside him. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, a lot of people think with Cato River out, Rock Your World's loose on the lead. I'm not so sure that's true. Again, I think a lot will be predicated on the break. But I think going into that first turn, we could see 3 or 4 of them, vying for the early lead. And, of course, that's going to be crucial. The pace is going to be crucial here. We haven't seen a real pace meltdown in the Derby since Orb won. And part of the reason for that is, the change in the point system. All those fast 2-year-olds that qualified for the Derby back years ago and set ridiculous paces and finished last, we don't have that anymore. But there's a potential in here, perhaps for a bit of a pace duel. So again, you could look this over for hours and hours, and once the gates open, it's in the hands of the riders, and anything could happen, though.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a solid pace, but it's not going to be like a breakneck pace. Let's move on to the next question. Francis Ortega wants to know what we think of Highly Motivated. I'll start on this one. I thought Highly Motivated had his chance last time. The Bluegrass came up with not a lot of pace. He was loose on the lead, and he wasn't good enough. He couldn't hold off Essential Quality. It was his first time going 2 turns. Now he'll be only making his second 2-turn try. He's got to try and go an extra 1/8 of a mile, which I don't think is going to be his friend. And I don't think the pace comes up well for him, especially including his wide draw. So I think it's a really, really tall order for him, and I'm against him. Mike, what do you think of him? What have you seen of him there?
Well, like I said earlier, my first thought when they crossed the wire in the Bluegrass was, this race is going to drain both of these horses a little bit coming back here. And as I've written a couple of days in my daily clocker stuff, I just haven't liked what I've seen from Highly Motivated the last couple of days coming out of his work over the weekend. He's just not moving as smoothly. He just doesn't seem as energetic as he was when he first got here from Keeneland last week. So combine the two, and I'm not a fan.
Andy, you got any contrary opinion to what Mike and I have expressed about him?
No, but after reading some of Mike's comments, that sealed the deal for me.
All right, so no Highly Motivated love here. If you're keying a horse in the Derby, do you think horizontal or vertical wagers provide more value? Andy, how do you attack a race like this from that regard?
Well, not so successfully as would be my. This is an honest statement based on my track record. I mean, it really depends on on just the contour of an individual race. If you love a horse, you probably want to key him on top or first and second. If it's wide open, but you've got some bombers in your mix, spread. I mean, I feel I'm just, if I'm wrong on Medina Spirit, I'm probably going to lose. So I would uh, certainly play some exactas with him and certainly a win bet. But if he's out, then in my heart of hearts, I know I don't have a great idea.
Mike, you have any thoughts on how to approach the Derby from this standpoint?
I think every Derby is probably different, and this one, for me, might be a race where I'm not a big, superfecta player or pick five player in general. This kind of race, though, where I really can't settle in on one horse I love, where I would normally make a big win bet and then maybe try to, throw a few exactas and trifectas in to sweeten the pot a little bit. If you like a bunch of horses in here that are prices and you think Essential Quality is vulnerable as the winner, it might be the kind of race where you take, 3, 4, 5 horses, box them for, whatever you can afford and just hope they get in the mix and you're right about Essential Quality being vulnerable at a short price. That's how I would look at it.
And the other thing to look at regarding a horizontal wager is that you've got to see what the opportunities are on the races that are also part of the sequence that you're looking at, whether you're landing on the Derby or the Derby's in the middle of the sequence or however it is. If there are races in that sequence where you see favorites that you think are beatable and you can get some value by beating those favorites, then maybe it's worth using 4 or 5 in the Derby itself and being a little narrower in the races that are part of that sequence around it and trying to get some value that way. So, every situation is different and it also depends on what your own personal preference is. But I don't think there's a real one size fits all every year regarding the Derby. If you happen to like a horse, that you automatically must do this. Let's move on to the next question, which is, does the month a horse is born affect your handicapping? For example, Sainthood has just turned 3. To me, it's of moderate importance. The ability that they've shown in their races is something that I pay far more attention to. So it's not, for me, it's not that big a deal at this point. It's more of a big deal when they're making their debuts at 2. Andy, Mike, you guys have any thoughts on this?
Totally agree.
I pay attention to.
Very well. Let's move on to the next question. Our friend Zabi is back. On Derby Day, so many horses that look good don't fire. What are some of the things to look for in Formulator that may help land on a contender? Andy, what are some of, forget the first part of that question. What's the second part? What are some things that, when you use Formulator, what are some of the things that you like to use?
I'm always looking at trainer patterns and, and looking for, for trainers who have particular strengths and weaknesses in a situation that's relevant to today's race. Now, you don't need Formulator to look up Todd Pletcher's record in the Kentucky Derby, but he has come to the Derby with so many horses with excellent prep races, good looking form, and and his record has been dismal. So for me, I would just be against all the Pletcher horses in this field. I mean, just as a matter of principle.
Mike, anything you like to glean with Formulator when you're handicapping?
No, I just spend most of my time looking at replays, looking at the PPs, and of course, leaning a lot towards the workouts. The one thing about Todd Pletcher's Derby record, though, he comes to the race a lot of times because these horses qualify, their owners want to run. He runs them, and you can see in here 3 of his 4 horses are 50-1, 30-1, but they're in here because they can be. So it kind of clutters up the record. Steve Asmussen too. He's over 21 in the Derby. He's only run in 13 or 14 Derbies, so a lot of those are whatever happens with Todd, whether he wins or loses, he's still going to have at least 3 losers in here, unless there's a miracle dead heat. So I put less importance on that stat with him or even Steve. But no, I'm just I'm kind of old fashioned. I just go with the meat and potatoes in the form more or less, and more what I see on the track, workouts and in the morning.
Do trainers ever say to owners, I know you've got enough points to get into the starting gate, but this horse can't win. Why don't we run him where he belongs sometime? I just, I hate to see, horses cluttering up a field who don't belong in it. Yeah, every once in a while lightning will strike, but whether it's the Derby or just a run-of-the-mill, this is the way you're supposed to manage horses, run them where they belong. And I hate to see so many people disregarding that truth.
I don't disagree with you, and I would love to see the Derby be run with 14 horses like the Oaks. That would eliminate some of that clutter, and that clutter causing some of the better horses not to win.
All right, this next question is one I'm surprised it took this long for somebody to bring this horse up, but I think this is a really good question, and I want everybody to weigh in on it. How disturbing is it to you that Mandolin's last race was so poor, and what's the minimum price you'd expect on him? I'll bat lead off here. It's very disturbing to me. They haven't been able to come up with an excuse for the race, and basically you've got to take it on a leap of faith that he's going to bounce back from that race and outrun 19 others on Saturday. Now, maybe he will, but that's a leap of faith that's hard for me to make. The good thing is that, as Jay alludes to here, and obviously he's a bright person because of his first name, you're going to be able to get a price. What's the most acceptable price here? For me, I wouldn't accept anything less than at least 12-1 on him. Certainly nothing less than that. Mike, you've seen the horse. You said he's impressed you in his training. What are your thoughts on these two aspects of Mandolin?
It's very disturbing to me too. We haven't seen a horse, with a poor Derby prep win the Derby since maybe Thunder Gulch, and I don't think even his prep was got beat as far as Mandolin did. All I can do is I see how he's doing. This is Churchill Downs. That was Fairgrounds. He seems to love this racetrack, his home grounds. Brad Cox is the teacher, so that's a big plus there. Yeah, I wouldn't accept less than 12 or 15 probably. Even Florent Giroux, through his agent, he's scratching his head. He sees no, reason why he ran so poorly last time, but he's confident that he's going to bounce back the way he's doing here. So, he became a little bit of a buzz horse, I guess, partly because of our workout report, perhaps. But maybe some of that will be negated by the Mattress Mac money that'll pull him back up to 12 or 15-1. So, somewhere in that vicinity would be the minimum I'd accept. And I'm not so sure he could win, but I do think he's definitely worth throwing in the number somewhere if you're playing those vertical bets.
Yeah, and Brad Cox wins an awful lot of races at least where I look at the horse on paper and I think, no, I can't. He is a tough guy to beat.
All right. Robert Shanley wants to know, it's hard to take the Wood horses seriously. The race was so slow. I agree. To me, I don't want anybody coming out of the Wood. I thought it was a poor race. It was a slow race. I don't need anybody from there. Do either of you have a dissenting opinion on that position?
No, it was slower than the Philly race on the same day, and those weren't the greatest fillies in the world either. I just, I would put an X over all those Wood horses.
I don't disagree with that either. After watching the Wood, I was of the same opinion. I just like what I've seen from Dynamic One, and he's going to be even higher than 12 and 15-1. He's just trained really well. And again, I'm not so sure he can win. I'm not saying he's a horse that's going to win this race coming out of the Wood, because that would be the first time someone came out of the Wood in a long time and won this race. But I do think if things broke the right way, especially if we get a bit of a pace meltdown, I think he certainly can finish in the top 3 or 4.
Very well. Let's move on to the next question. Chris Parker wants to know if Brooklyn Strong is viable in a 4-horse tri-box. Not for me. No. There's absolutely nothing appealing about him. He comes out of that terrible Wood. I thought he had minimal trouble in the race. And to me, it just looks like an owner's vanity play to be in this field. I don't like him one bit.
Yeah, and the race was falling apart, and he didn't really make any ground late. He wouldn't be in my 10-horse trot pocket.
I think I agree with Andy there too.
All right, let's move on. Paul Lee wants to know about Soup and Sandwich. Now, as Mike Welsch will tell you, soup's not a meal. Soup and Sandwich is really under the radar. He is, but as we were saying earlier, we think the way the race comes up is really challenging for him because of the pace and where he's drawn. Mike, I mean, you've seen him more than anybody because he raced in Florida this winter. Do you give him any shot to even get into the gimmicks?
I don't. And again, I start with the fact he's only had 3 starts, and the pace scenario is probably not going to suit him. If you watch him train in the morning when he's not breezing, you wouldn't give him a chance in a 15 claimer. He just is the most. He just doesn't look like a horse that has any interest in doing his morning work. But he did work very well here on April 17th. He finished strong, galloped out really well. When he came back on April 23rd, it was a maintenance work. And like I said, he was very headstrong going into the work, which leads me to believe that he will be a pace factor here, but he's not in my top 6 or 8 picks in the spot. Just hasn't done enough for me to merit that kind of consideration.
All right, we're only going to take a couple more questions here, and then we're going to wrap up as we get to the top of the hour with the selections from the 3 of us. But let's go here with Big Guy Sports Selector wants to know if Superstock is the sleeper with a real shot to win. I thought he got a complete setup in the Arkansas Derby. He's certainly on the improve, and he's trained by an outstanding trainer. I just think there's faster horses in this race. It would make a great story if he won with the family connections, but he's got to continue to improve and improve a lot. Andy, what do you think of Superstock?
Yeah, I mean, the Arkansas Derby really came up, a thin race, and the figure was nothing. He had a real soft stock trip. I mean, I couldn't use this horse at all.
Mike, what have you seen of him?
Yeah, I agree. He looks good. He came out of the race well. He gallops. He's been galloping every day, or had been in draw reins to keep him from doing too much. He looks good when he gallops, but a lot of horses really look good when they gallop in draw reins. But they took the draw reins off today, and he looked good today doing that too. He kind of relaxed and went around there okay. I just don't think he's good enough. And I would think if you asked the Steve Asmussen camp which of their 2 starters they think has a better chance of winning, it wouldn't be the Grade 1 winner. It would be the Grade 2 place Midnight Bourbon.
All right, we'll take one more, and then, maybe not. We'll go for our top 3 right now. I'll bat lead off here. I put Hot Rod Charlie on top. I think they kind of alluded to that earlier. I really liked his win in the Arkansas Derby, in the Louisiana Derby, and I love the way he's trained coming out of the race. And I like the fact that he's got the kind of tactical speed that can put him into the race and not have to come from out the back and try and make up too much ground. I put Medina Spirit second in my racing form picks. I like Andy. I thought his race in the Santa Anita Derby was better than looked. And to me, if you just said, here's horse X, he has never finished worse than second. The only 2 horses who ever have finished in front of him are Rock Your World and Life is Good, and he's going to be 12 to 15 to 1. Your reaction would be, where do I sign up for this? So to me, he's excellent value in this race. And my 3rd choice is Rock Your World. I thought his race in the Santa Anita Derby was very good. He did get it his own way that day. And for me, I think that the start for him is paramount. He has to get out and be forwardly placed, because if he doesn't break and he gets kickback, he could be in a bit of trouble. The thing that to me is intriguing about him is that with only 3 starts, he could go either way. He could continue his upward momentum in terms of his Beyer figures, and he does have the best Beyer figure in the race, or maybe he reacts off that and regresses. But as you can see, I'm very provincial here. It's all California all the time for me in the top 3 for the Kentucky Derby. Andy, what do you like?
Well, if you and I are doing a double kiss of death, I guess. I mean, it's Medina Spirit and Hot Rod Charlie are my two. I'll throw in one of the Louisiana horses in the third slot because I think that was a pretty strong race overall. But
Is that Midnight
Medina
Bourbon?
and Charlie are the two that I can really make a case for. And, just once in my life, I just want to hit a cold exact in a 20-horse Kentucky Derby.
Andy, were you referring to Midnight Bourbon as the other horse out of Louisiana? Is that
Midnight Bourbon or the aforementioned Mandolin?
Okay, Mike, who are your top three?
Before I give my top three, am I allowed to ask a question? I got a question for Andy.
I don't know. I don't know if you're allowed.
Andy, what's your theory about horses bouncing off big efforts? Because you like Rock Your World. He ran an 82, 100. Does that concern you at all?
No, I've never accepted the bounce theory. I mean, I think that the vast majority of cases where a horse really steps up and people are saying, oh, he went from 85 to 100 and he's got him bounce. When horses run the big improved races, it's often just because the circumstances of the race enable them to run the big race. And Rock Your World is a perfect example. I mean, he did his first two races were nobody was writing home about him, and then he caught the gold rail at Santa Anita and he ran a figure of 100. You won't find him on Saturday.
Mike, who are your top three?
I guess I'm a little provincial because I'm picking Known Agenda on top. I think there's just too many good boxes to check there. He's had 4 races at 1 mile and an eighth. 3 of them he's won. He's got a lot of good schooling in the Florida Derby. Obviously, the blinkers have made a big help. Been a big help for him as he improved leaps and bounds with the equipment change. He's got Irad Ortiz Jr., who's riding as well as anybody in the country. Maybe Joel Rosario backers will disagree with that, but you've got Irad. So I went with Known Agenda on top, and then I just scrambled, like I mentioned earlier, some of the big price horses that I just think are training well because I feel compelled as the clocker to do something like that. And I respect what I see on these good works. It's worked out well in the past many times, especially at prices. So I've got Mandolin with the big question mark over his last race. Behind the Midnight Bourbon. And then out of that Wonderful Wood, I've got Dynamic One because all 3 will be double digits, and I think all 3 can hit the board.
Well, don't forget you can get all your daily racing form past performances at drf.com. There's a Derby VIP package, which includes all the workout reports that Mike and his crew are going to have for those giant cards on both Oaks Day Friday and Derby Day Saturday at Churchill Downs. Again, that's all available at drf.com. If you've got more questions regarding the Kentucky Derby, Mike and I are both on Twitter, and we're easy to follow. Mine is DRF Privman, and Mike's cleverly is DRF Welsch. Andy is not available on Twitter. But he's available here, and we're glad to have him of the eponymous Beyer Speed Figures. Thanks to Andy Beyer. Thanks to Mike Welsch. Thanks to our producer, Emily Shields. And thanks to you for watching. Have a great Kentucky Derby weekend, and we will see you again next time. I'm Jay Privman. Be well, everybody.